Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Line Change, the NHL betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Leboff. Joining me, as always, are my co-hosts and friends, Tim Kalinowski and Nick Martin. Together, the three of us are about to go on a handicapping journey through the 11-game slate on Thursday night. That's nothing compared to the 16 games we saw on Tuesday, and nothing compared to the one game we'll see on Wednesday night. We are recording before Caps and Devils, but neither of them are in action on Thursday, so not too much to worry about there. As always, we're going to start out with our favorite underdog picks for Thursday night. We're kind of all over the board here. A couple short dogs and a big dog. Nick, you can go first.
So some listeners might cringe at the thought of going back on the Flyers after that tough loss in Vegas, but as an underdog versus a wild team that I'm kind of still trying to find spots to fade, I like it. I think it's a good time to get on it. Don't love that they're traveling back from Vegas for this one. That's kind of the only downside. But I think catching them at home versus kind of a wild team that I really think hasn't shown that much. They've kind of played in some sloppy, ugly games and found a way to come out on the right side of it. But Philly with Carter Hart in goal, they're doing a lot of things well. They're controlling play at a high level. I still think the fact that they're supposed to be kind of a joke is leaking into the market here. And then the other thing, when I look at this team, the roster's really not that bad anymore, right? Like, I think that's the main thing. Maybe I'm being, a little generous, but I just look at it and I think if Couturier is going to be a legit top line center and the rest of the offense is kind of getting a little deeper, there's definitely some guys we're not happy to bet on the back end, but overall, this is a pretty good team, and I think that the numbers we're seeing Wednesday are very playable on them.
Yeah, Phillies, I saw today, they were still 8-1 to make the playoffs. Their updated season point total is 76.5, so not too much change in terms of like their big picture outlook, but I agree with you. I think just in the short term, this is absolutely a bet on team, and I'll talk about them a little bit later in the show. Tim, any thoughts on Philly and Minnesota before you give out your dog?
Yeah, I'm obviously on Philly here too. I'm not. I think Nick, you nailed it with the Minnesota's caught teams in some favorable spots. And I also think that just coming off that big win against the Oilers, super strong third period on Tuesday night, I think that Philly's going to be a little hungrier than they are, and Philly's been a surprising start, and I'm still jumping on. You nailed it. Play from Couturier. Couturier has been really good. He's been a stud for them again. So it was kind of like a see it to believe it situation with him coming back after last season. So they're a play on team right now. Simple as that.
All right, and your underdog for today, Thursday?
Yeah, I'm sticking in the same state. I'm going with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they are playing the undefeated Colorado Avalanche. Wow, Tim, you absolute idiot moron! What are you doing, fading the Avalanche? Well, this is the underdog segment, so I don't love a lot of the dogs on this board, but I land here on Pittsburgh ultimately because of buy low, sell high type situation. We talked about it with the Red Wings and the Kraken the other night, and I think this is kind of the same thing. The sky is falling in Pittsburgh. I was reading a lot of Pittsburgh media today, and this is a mess. Sound the alarms. Is Sullivan going to lose his job? And I think that usually when the betting market or the narrative is something that a team has done, that's when, as a bettor, you want to bet on that team. Unfortunately, it's against the Colorado Avalanche, but I do think, hey, they're going to have to lose at one point here. So it's more about playing on Pittsburgh and hoping we get a big response from them, because if not, I think Sullivan might indeed get fired.
Yeah, I think Pittsburgh looks like they're in a good spot here, and we'll try again. We thought that this might be the case for the Islanders game against the Avalanche on Tuesday night, but I would assume that Alexander Georgiev gets the night off on Thursday. He's played all their games. Maybe Bednar wants to keep going with the hot hand until they lose. You can see that, but at some point you got to get Ivan Provisov a game, and think that they should be trying to keep Georgiev as fresh as possible. And this looks like a decent spot for it. So this Penguins number might go down is the point I'm making. When we hear the goalie starts on Thursday, Nick, are you? Oh no, you'll save your thoughts for this one at the end of the show, actually. But before we move on from this game and get into the big board, I just want to turn it over to you about Nathan MacKinnon props, because you were talking about this after the show yesterday a little bit, and you'll hear the narrative about MacKinnon versus Crosby, two Cole Harbor boys going at it, two first overall picks, and I think you put it right. Like, there are times when you do want to start playing into some narratives, of course.
Wait, they're from the same place? Really?
You wouldn't believe it, Tim. And you're not going to hear about it. Weirdly, you won't hear about it all game long tomorrow. Which the broadcast should maybe mention it once in a while.
Yeah, so I think you want to, factor it in here and there, but it's one of those things. I think people get confused when they talk about narratives all the time and then say things like can't miss the times that they work out, and then the times they don't, they just like pretend it never happened. But I mean, one of the main reasons I like this too is just because of the way that I think MacKinnon matches up versus the Penguins. Like, on top of the fact that he clearly is up for these games. Like, he does like to face off against Crosby and kind of test himself and, show his worth on that front. But I do think it's always just been a pretty great matchup versus the Pens, right? Like, we all know they're not going to defend the rush great this year at all. They've been giving up a ton of goals right after zone entries. McKinnon's a zone entry machine. Rantanen looks so good. So it'll be one I keep my eye on. But the other thing is the way the play is going. Like, his numbers might just be so juiced that you can't do it, I think. So
yeah,
we'll
it's
see
like an
where
alt
that
total
goes.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it does seem when he's dialed in, he's pretty money for shots. Like, you could just go like 6 or 7 and take the plus number and give it a chance. So I'll have my eye on that.
My favorite underdog, once again, going to try to beat the Boston Bruins. Fool's errand, perhaps, as they are also undefeated, 1 of 3 remaining, along with the Knights and Avs. But the Ducks are plus 260, and I said it on the Tuesday show that this Ducks team, I think, really profiles well in these kind of spots at these kind of numbers, because they do have the offensive upside. That upside has certainly helped when Trevor Zegras isn't benched for an entire period in overtime, although they got away with it against Columbus. So I don't know. I think this Anaheim team is just better than we thought. I think they're bettable and a play-on team for me right now, Nick.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's the Ducks or nothing. I'd definitely say, like, I wouldn't encourage anyone, leave the Bruins off your parlays and all that crap, because I think it's not the time.
Spot, yeah.
Maybe you could maybe try to look at the Ducks winning the first period or something like that. I think I've had a little more success trying to fade Boston on that front in some of these kind of scrappy spots. It feels like they always just find their game by the third and then win it by a goal or a late empty net or two. But I agree that the Ducks are playing really competitive hockey, and this is, again, just a humongous price. So I don't know if I want to bet it yet, but I agree. And Boston did kind of show, like, they did the one tough matchup versus the Kings. They played really well, but a ton of people have been talking about how much of a joke the schedule's been. Like, it's almost been weird that it worked out to be this soft. So it'll be really interesting to see where the Sabres or the Bruins are at like 3 weeks from now when they've played some good teams.
Tim, anything on Ducks and Bees before we get going on the rest of the slate?
Are we really doing this?
Yep.
Are we really doing this again?
It's also that classic spot too, like long road trip, cross the country, first game home.
Every spot to fade the Bruins is classic spot. They're like spot proof.
They're so good at just racking up points.
This is like a, lick your chops, Claude Julien lay an egg spot, and they don't do it anymore. No. So I'm saying I'm not doing this again right now in 24 hours. I'm probably gonna bet the Ducks.
Well, and at some point it does get to where, like, you have to credit these teams that always find a way, almost like when it's been this for 2 regular seasons. And then we were talking about this with the Flames, where it's the exact reverse. Like, every game you see the accounts being like, oh, the third line played to an 80% expected goals and all that stuff like that. And it's like, all right, well, they never score and they never win the close ones. So I basically just saying Boston continues to prove to be the reverse of that, where they're finding ways.
Goalies are good too.
That helps a lot.
All right, let's go through the big board here. Kraken traveling to Carolina, Seattle with a gutsy win in Motown over the Red Wings on Tuesday night, or plus 160. The Hurricanes minus 192 after a loss to Tampa Bay, shutout loss, and the over/under is 6.5. I feel like a lot of people are going to be tempted by this Kraken number just because of how Carolina's looked. Nick, I don't see it. I think that this is a stylistically not a great matchup for Seattle, and also you're just the goaltending for Carolina, even if it doesn't come out as a strength at the end of the year, we're saying, man, like the Hurricanes goalie struggled. It's not going to be this bad. I think Antti Raanta has like an 822 save percentage or something crazy like that. So at some point that'll get better. So this is a pass for me.
Yeah, and well, like to talk about Carolina's goaltending, I think that one of the major differences that they're actually not defending well, which has basically never happened in the time Rod's been there and the time any of these goalies have started for them. Like they haven't actually played behind like shaky defensive play, which is kind of where it's at right now. I agree with you. I still think this is a little too much of a scary spot. Like you just like listen to the narratives going around Carolina and they've been so consistent. I don't quite want to bet it just because I don't know if the number's there. They're still getting respect and there are some actual problems, but I'm not going to get sucked into the Kraken.
Tim?
Yeah, I was doing some reading today, and Haxtell said either last night or earlier in the week that they have kind of like a hangover effect from overachieving last year. And it's like, he said, I know it sounds silly, but, and I'm paraphrasing here, but like, yeah, we kind of have a hangover effect. It's like, I don't think that's too encouraging from a team that didn't win the Stanley Cup having a bit of a hangover effect. So that was a bit alarming. I was on the Kraken against the Wings the other night, and I felt like I completely got away with one. They had 2 power plays in the last 5 minutes of that game to tie it up and then eventually win it in overtime. So for me here, I look at 2 teams that have had poor starts to the year, but Carolina is a way better team than Seattle. So that's why I see the price is correct here, even though I naturally want to take the dog. So I have landed on under 6.5 here. I already grabbed it, and I think it's going to keep going down. So apologies if by the time this is out, 6.5 isn't there anymore. But I think that this bodes for, I envision a scenario in which the Hurricanes just completely make it a bottleneck for the Kraken offensively, and the Kraken aren't talented enough to score with limited chances.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll throw in there too is I think Ty Karche, you have to watch where his number's at. Yesterday, there was plus 650 out there, and once he was set up on the top line with 2 guys that can move the puck pretty well, that was like a complete smash. He's going to be a good NHL scorer. He's got a crazy shot. So, yeah, definitely keep your eye out on that if they don't move it enough.
Blue Jackets and Habs right now, 2 teams with decent starts to the season in terms of their record. The Jackets are a slight dog on the road, plus 105. Montreal is minus 125. And the over/under is 6.5. Both teams coming off losses on the Frozen Frenzy. Columbus to the Ducks in overtime in Montreal. Not the best showing, except for Mike Matheson against the New Jersey Devils. Pretty easy pass for me here, Nick.
Yeah, I actually kind of like the Blue Jackets as an underdog. Like I look at what Montreal's done and I'd say it's a worse profile. I think the teams are pretty comparable on paper. Jake Allen's looked good, but how much is that going to continue? I look at this and I think that's really their edge. And so I don't mind the Blue Jackets as an underdog here. We kind of talked about this yesterday. I think Montreal has been pretty awful. Like they're 31st in expected goals. That seems 100% fair to me. They've had some tough matchups, but they've just been getting by with the right combination of goals at the right time, goaltending, all of that good stuff, but nothing that I think is, really just profiling as a team that I actually think is good. And the Jackets will be bad, don't get me wrong, but they look respectable. Like they think they're in it to win some games this year, right? So I think not bad getting the Blue Jackets as an underdog here.
Yeah, I tend to agree, Nick. The math here for me is this: these are two bottom of the league teams, or at least pretty damn near the bottom of the league, and so I don't think the Habs should be favored really against anyone. I know it's Columbus, but for me, when you see two not so great teams like this, I tend to lean towards the underdog. I don't know quite yet if I'm going to play it, but I will say with these bigger slates, I've been having a blast betting round robins for people out there. Like I love five team round robins, 2x10s. It's I do it with goal scores, and I do it a lot with money lines as well. And I think that Columbus could be a good fit here as a slight dog into your round robin plays. And as Nick said, I would keep the Bruins out of that because they could be ripe.
Yeah, just throw the Ducks in to add some juice, or throw the Sharks in. They're plus 230 on the road in Tampa.
Yeah, I don't know.
Minus 285 for the Lightning and the over/under 6.5. I think the thing here for me is, one, I think this number's going up on San Jose. Not saying I'm going to bet it. Two, if you had told me maybe, and things change, of course, so this isn't like a 100% logical thing, but if you had told me on August 1st that you had an opportunity to bet a team at what will likely be a better price than plus 230, but we'll say plus 230 right now, against Jonas Johansson or some guy named Matt Tompkins in goal for another team, be like, oh yeah, I don't care who is it. That it might, maybe it's the Charlotte Checkers, but I might just do it. Now Johansson's been good, and I tip of the cap to Nick for that, for just wondering if perhaps he's kind of clicked into gear here, and it seems like he has. But that's the tempting part here, is if we get Blackwood in his blistering form against Johansson, like it could be a tempting thing, but I'm really stretching to find anything of note on to make me want to bet San Jose. Like they just might be a blacklist team.
Yeah, I had said this to you. Like I just look at it and think, with how bad they look and how many wins they might rack up this year, I actually don't think they're being a big enough underdog in a lot of these matchups. We said it versus Boston, that I thought Boston was a clear plus EV play based on all the numbers. I thought the same last night versus Florida, and Florida played sick. Barkov sat last minute. They played their backup goalie. Like the Sharks have played good teams, but that's basically the exact same script they had versus Carolina, and they're just getting crushed. Like they look horrible. This is like, it looks like they're well below everyone in the league. They're 32nd in pretty much all the analytics and the eye test degrees. So I can't do it with the Sharks here. I think maybe if Johansson's not in, you could do something, maybe look at the Sharks team totals. But, and this is like, these are still spots for this Tampa team right now where I'm not like worried about them letting down. They need to rack up the points. I think they're playing respectably. It should help them kind of, they've had some defensive flaws, but they've kind of come against good teams. And the Johansson thing too, because I think a lot of people are so set on like fading him, and I mean, that's the way it was for so many years. But when you look at it last season in a tiny sample, he actually had really good numbers. We talked about this season, how he had a really good preseason, and now he's had a really, really strong start. So it's entirely possible that Johansson is actually just going to be not like a pure fade candidate where you can just like put the money down and be like, okay, he's going to give up some softies. So there's that level of it too. I don't know. Could be a good prop game for the Lightning.
Not your grandpa's Jonas Johansson anymore.
Yeah, not an auto fade.
Back when I was an intern, peek behind the curtain a couple years ago, we have this big like chat here at Action Network where people send outrageous bets. And back before Lieboff even knew who I was, he would be sending in all the time, like the Coyotes at plus 425, like biggest underdog. Like when they played like the Leafs, like three times in a row or something like that. So, and I'm thinking of that right now and saying to myself, the Sharks are unbettable pretty much until we start to get those.
Yeah, I actually think that's a fair point. Is like the Coyotes were on the road in Toronto when they beat the Leafs, like over 400. So this Sharks team is worse than that team. Obviously, like that Coyotes team was decent last year relative to expectations, and the Sharks team is basically $2 more expensive than
That's the
the
thing.
Coyotes
Like
were.
they
And I
might
know
win
the
it
Leafs are better
sometime.
than Tampa. Like that version of the Leafs is better than this version of Tampa. But meet me somewhere in the middle, right? Like this is
I don't think the numbers are there yet. This
no.
team is awful. Like they
We need to
deserve
see
to be
3.
huge dogs.
Need
We
to
need to
see
see like football money line numbers on these
Yeah.
teams when it's like a really good team playing like a team that gets 3 wins.
Jets and Wings. So this is an interesting price, I think. The Jets are, it's basically a pick 'em, right? Jets minus 105 on the road in Detroit. Wings minus 115 and the over under 6.5. I know James Reimer's in, so that's part of the reason the price is like this, but it just kind of tells you that folks are still kind of skeptical of this Red Wing start. Because not like the Jets are some juggernaut. They're middle of the pack in the Western Conference. We uh, don't hate the Jets at all, but the fact that on the road that the Wings near the top of the table in the Eastern Conference are just minus 115, everything's going right for them. Kind of speaks volumes of people trying to poke holes in the start. Nick, anything for you here with Winnipeg and Detroit?
I lean Jets, but I don't think it's anything I need to bet. They're you look at the Jets, and the Flames game was pretty impressive. The Florida game was really impressive. They lost to the Kings in the one that was a true letdown. That Knights game we know I thought was a bad beat. It was one of our picks. Thought they were pretty good. Pretty quality win Saturday in Edmonton. Hellebuck had to be good, but he's supposed to be the number one reason the Jets are good. So reasonable. And then last night, pretty decent versus the Blues. So I think that their record is a little misleading. I had noted that entering that game versus the Blues last night, like it was the biggest favorite they've been this season, and they took advantage. And I just look at this. I still think it's very possible that the Jets are the better team out of these two, right? And this price kind of suggests that. So I kind of see this as Jets or pass.
Tim?
It's funny. I've heard people say before when talking about betting on the NFL, the market has gotten sharper over the years, and I've heard some people say this line, which is 3, would have been 6 like 10 years ago. Like a team that had an embarrassing Monday Night Football loss, and you want to back them because the whole world's thinking they suck. And this line is kind of like that for me with the Wings, where we all kind of want to fade the Wings because we think they can't be this good. But this is like a line where it's like, maybe 5 years ago we would have got the Jets at a better, big plus money price, like a plus 120 or something like that. And we're just not. So like I'm not taking the cheese here.
Fair enough. Islanders hosting the Senators. I think this might be the biggest regular season game in the history of the NHL. Two teams desperately needing a win on some losing streaks. They'll be gutting it out for a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference race. They just don't make them like this anymore, man. This would be Sunday Night Football if the NHL had flex games. Senators plus 105 in UBS Arena. Islanders hosting them at minus 125. Total of 6. There was a chance that Brady Tkachuk would miss this game through suspension. I think the right decision was made there, that he didn't get the instigator automatic 1-game suspension with his tussle with Alex Tuck. I don't think that this price is all that interesting. I do think Matt Barzal as an anytime goal scorer, once again, is interesting. He's shooting the pucks. He's getting good spots. Horvat is good enough to find him, and that's something that he just hasn't had. So Barzal, just try to see what his prices are. That would be the one thing that I have of note. And I want to also say that Ilya Sorokin has given up 5 goals in back-to-back starts, and he's been incredible in both of them. It's so outrageous, and speaks to the Islanders' struggles right now in defense. Tim, what do you got?
This is probably going to be a pass for me because I'm not quite sure who the Senators are. It's kind of like the Red Wings situation. On this podcast, I should be able to provide you more detail, be the one to provide the insight on who they actually are. But I get concerned with Islanders games, especially because I don't know whose style of game they're going to play, or, when they play a team like Colorado the other night. Like I thought that if the Islanders could drag Colorado into their game, it would bode well for the Islanders. Never saw like 9 goals in that game ever coming. So I have a problem with these in that I don't know whose style of game they're going to play. And you've mentioned too, Lieboff, that the Sens have some deficiencies in net, at least with the matchup with the Islanders.
And also of note, like things kind of seem to be there seems to be a little bit of smoke in the Senators camp as well. I know it's like just a 2-game losing streak, but then the thing with Anton Forsberg being pulled and Travis Hamonic had to be the one to tell him on the ice, and there's just a lot of media pressure on that team in general to get off to a hot start. It looked like they were going to, and now they're 3-3. So whether you want to factor that into handicapping hockey games is totally up to you, but just something to keep in mind here, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like the Sens here. I think they're playing a lot better as a team, but like I said to you, I just don't want to fade Sorokin with middling-looking Sens goaltending. I still think it should be better than it's been, but I mean, they hung around with the Devils and the Avs and pretty much got caved in, and that actually kind of like scares me a little bit here because I'm like they're going to be able to, probably handle the Senators a little better and give Sorokin a little more chance to steal a game. So I lean Sens, but I don't really see much value here.
All right, Blues and Flames now. Speaking of media pressure, the Flames, man. What is going on up there in Nick's neck of the woods? The Blues are plus 150 on the road. Flames minus 180. Over under 6. I rarely would thought I was going to say this early in the season, but it's Blues or nothing here at this price. I just don't know if there's this big of a difference between where these two teams are right now. And if you were to say the Flames play like a 65-35% game against the Blues and just tilting the ice, I think the Blues have a decent chance of still winning that game because of their finishing against the Flames finishing. So, and the goaltending matchup with Bennington in decent form to start the season. Tim.
Blues yeah, Calgary's lost 3 in a row. I think you nailed it in saying that I don't see much difference between these two teams compared to what the price is. So I think it's Blues or nothing. I'm kind of shocked by how much love the Flames are getting here. I just don't see it could get real ugly there. So like it's similar kind of to the Pittsburgh situation when I'm like, oh, I'm going to back Pittsburgh as a dog here. Similar situation going on in Calgary, but it's like I'm not laying minus 180 with the Flames with that situation. I'm not like that dead set on buy low because this is too expensive of a price. So the Blues are pesky enough to make this a ball game.
Yeah, you can't bet Calgary here, I don't think. And they're like, at what point is it not that complicated that this team doesn't have talents to finish these plays, right? Like if Huberdeau's going to look pretty middling offensively, Calgary looks horrific, then who's really that good of a scoring threat on this team as much as they can control play and that sort of thing? I think their decor is excellent. It's their huge advantage over St. Louis and could help them like lead to a win here. In theory, they should still have a goaltending advantage, but yeah, you're banking on a lot, I think, to bet Calgary on these prices when they just continue not to pay off over and over.
They're a team that's kind of crying out for something like Dustin Wolf getting called up and starting a few games or something like that. It feels like
that would make some sense.
They've been crying out for something for 2 years.
Yeah, that's the thing. And I just feel like now, like another year of their stars looking like bad, I'm like, okay, yeah, this offense is just kind of flat. Like it is what it is, I think.
I remember the Flames beat writer for Sportsnet. Their first preseason game, or their first one where they dressed their starters, they were playing a Canucks C team basically, and Huberdeau looked awesome. Like in the first period, he scored a couple goals, and he was like, "This guy is full of confidence. Like this is looks like a weight is lifted off his shoulders." And all I was thinking was, I can't wait till we get to like November 1st and Huberdeau is struggling and
I actually think too, like he's been decent. Like Kadri, it's like, what are
he's got
you
nothing with him,
doing?
but
It
yeah.
like doesn't even. It's like hard to believe he was ever. Wasn't it only not last season, but the year before that? Like 3 months into the year, he was a borderline MVP candidate.
Yeah.
Like
With
that
the
seems
I mean,
literally
just think
unfathomable.
about how like big of a deal it was with him getting hurt in that Stanley Cup run. Everyone's like, I don't know, man. Like
Yeah, and he scored some huge goals
yeah,
for them
with like
too.
one thumb. Yeah.
Yeah.
They could use like a Daryl Sutter to kind of like come.
Yeah, they definitely could. Speaking of teams that could use a jolt, the Edmonton Oilers are really in trouble right now. They're even money home underdogs against the New York Rangers. The Rangers minus 120 and the total 6.5. I think that this game sets up really well if you're a Rangers backer, and I think that I would lean towards the Rangers here to same game parlay it with the under because they're defending so well, and if they get drawn into more of a back and forth, you know, offensive freak show with the Oilers team, it's going to dilute their chances to win. But if you think that the Rangers are a good bet here and you want to have some fun late at night, I would parlay it with the under because if they defend the way they have, especially without McDavid, the scary thing, of course, is that they could hang 8 on the Oilers themselves with the way the goaltending is going. But I just think a low event game really, really benefits the Rangers. I would lean towards the Rangers. I actually think the Rangers at minus 120 are bettable. Anything past that maybe is a little too much going against the Oilers, despite the start and McDavid being out. But that's how I'm looking to play this, Nick.
Yeah, my one fear with that, I agree. I think the Rangers are the more valuable side, and as you say, it's just like the Oilers are going to need to score their way out of games right now. Like that's what we're seeing. They're falling back into that rhythm, right? They've probably defended slightly better than I think people would say. Like it's been ugly, and they're clearly everyone's talking about how they're adjusting to their new in zone defense and that all that. But they are getting like league bottom goaltending, and it's like a bit of both, right? Because maybe the defense is a little worse than the analytics suggest, but like they've not defended great. They're getting horrific goaltending. You know, the Jack Campbell thing is like hilarious right now. I just had a moment where I was thinking about the Vezina call, and I had a chuckle there. But
Who said that?
Hey, it's a long season, man. Like this
not
is
to
just
call anyone out
let's
here,
see.
but yeah.
Not going to mention my Hughes call, though. Not going to mention my Hughes call.
Hey, I did mention that yesterday. I said that Hughes looks like a great call. So I don't know. The goaltending sucks. They're going to need to score their way out of it. I think that scares me a little bit. And yeah, the Rangers are playing really solid. Like that was another really quality game last night. So it's going to be really interesting heading into this Heritage Classic.
Right?
Like
an elimination game.
Yes.
Outdoors. You will be in attendance with our colleague Andy McNeil. For that, I should note that. Tim, your thoughts on Rangers and Oilers. Then, Nick, after that, I'll pass it to you for any thoughts on Friday's slate.
Oh, and I should throw in, too, I think Mika Zibanejad, depending on what number you're going to get. That's the thing. He's still getting priced like an elite goal scorer, but he's been pressing. He's had really good 2 games here, I think. Like, that goal is coming. And this could be the spot, right? Like I like the way, like, the kind of shots he should be able to get off with how Edmonton's been breaking down in the zone, and no faith in Campbell or Skinner at all right now. So maybe could be the night for that.
Nick, the Oilers don't allow a lot of quality chances. Okay, I don't really know where you got that from.
Well, it seemed reasonable to think it could be better this year, right? Like I thought it was going to be better than I got sold on it a little bit. But the whole time I've been at Action, I've done great just being like, this Oilers team sucks. I don't know what you guys are seeing. Like,
but you mentioned a good point with like changing their D structure, and not to bore anyone, but there's a great piece in The Athletic about the amount of teams that have changed from man to zone, especially this year. And I think that if you keep an eye and circle the teams that are going through that change, look, this is early in the season. We mentioned small sample size. Part of that could have to do with, hey, is this team struggling because they just suck, or they're struggling because they're having a hard time switching from man to zone. So
Yeah, and that's where it's been the worst combination for the Oilers, because there's been some that has just been defensive breakdowns, and they're not getting any saves at all. Like they have the league lowest high danger save percentage. So,
yeah. And as for this game too, I would say that the Rangers are a tough read for me because in my head, it's going to be near impossible for me to grade the Rangers until playoffs come, because right, like we know they're good, but it's kind of like they've already passed hockey 101. They've already passed the baseline exam. It's this team, it's all going to be about what they do in May. So that's why they're a hard regular season read for me. But the Oilers, it's so ugly there. I can't be on either side here.
All right, let's quickly look ahead to Friday. Decent amount of games to choose from for Friday night in the NHL, Nick. One in particular stands out to you, so give the listeners a little bit of a treat and a Friday look ahead spot.
Yeah, so I always sit there and look for these spots that are just going to be like a perfect bet. Everything's setting up well. And maybe I'm being a little favorable to the Caps, but I think with what will likely be a flurry start and probably like a pick'em price, the Caps could be a really good bet on Friday. Pretty sure I'll at least be in it for a unit because they really haven't been that bad. Like they're a little bit like the Flames right now, I'd say, where like it's probably natural that they're not going to finish that much and their stars aren't going to steal them many games anymore. But I thought the Toronto performance was quite unlucky, and that overall it's been quite reasonable. Like they have an expected goal share rate around league average, and I think that's been pretty fair to their play. Kemper's been pretty middling. I still think he should be a better than average goaltender this year, as hard as that is to predict. So with Minnesota playing a fairly tough game in Philly on Thursday, I'm kind of having that one circled as when it opens up Thursday before or when it opens Thursday, the game's Friday. It'll probably be a good bet at that point to take the Caps. I think it's one of those ones. It seems like odds makers and people don't always piece these together until a little later on. And it just seems like one's going to work in the Caps' favor pretty significantly, everything. So, yeah, that's kind of one that I'm really liking.
All right. On to the best bets. I should note that I'll probably be on the Coyotes in that return leg in the home and home against the Kings, because I'm expecting that there be a little overreaction there.
Oh, how about can we finally cash fading the Knights? Oh no, yeah. Oh no, they play the Blackhawks. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. All right, best bets now. I'm gonna go first because we talked about this game quite a bit already. I like the Flyers as a plus 110 underdog against the Wild. Philly at home as a dog. This price pretty similar to what we saw when Vancouver came to town earlier in the season, and I think you could have very reasonably say that you got to upgrade Philly since that game and the way they played. As long as Carter Hart starts, they should be in a decent spot against the Wild, who have been, I think, uneven throughout and aren't as deep without Spurgeon and Boldy. So give me the Flyers in a good spot at home. Tim, your favorite bet?
Yeah, and we didn't touch on it because we're saving it for this part of it, but the Stars minus in the 120 range right now against the Leafs. I think this comes down to the Stars. I think the Stars can play a better style of hockey than the Leafs, and if the Stars can play their game, totally favorable to them. The Leafs have been okay, and I think we're going to get Samsonov here, and I'm not stoked about if I was a Leafs fan, I wouldn't be stoked about that. The Stars, they just don't make a lot of mistakes, and the Leafs love to capitalize on mistakes. They're dangerous all the time. I think the Stars just kind of stifle the Leafs offense.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that this price looks a little cheap on Dallas against a Leafs team that is winning games, but they're winning games in spite of some really poor defense. And what we'll say it a lot, that what made them a truly elite team over the past couple of seasons was that they had this dynamic offense backed up by one of the best defensive teams in the league. So I think that the Stars should be able to cope with what the Leafs throw at them offensively, and that gives them a decent chance here. It's definitely a styles make fights kind of matchup because the Stars are struggling offensively, Nick, and the Leafs are struggling defensively.
Yeah, I just can't do it. I think like when you talk about it, to me, it just looks like the Stars are getting fair credit here, right? Like they're a slight favorite over a team that'll probably finish with the same amount of points as them. But yeah, it obviously hasn't been entirely convincing team play with Toronto. But that's the other thing that's so annoying is their superstars are just better than everyone else's superstars, except basically Edmonton, right? And like Nylander and Tavares are looking so lethal on the second line that they just make such a tough matchup. The power play is really good. But yeah, like you said, I mean, I'm not with Samsonov in for sure. You can't hate fading him if he's back in right now. You just can't figure it out. But yeah, I can see both sides of it. You know, I always the floor is just so low for Toronto with their stars, right? Like they can just sleepwalk through a game like they did in Washington, and then it's just create those looks that are going to go in, and you know that's that.
Yeah, I wanted to I want to also throw in that, you know, you mentioned the styles make fights things, and the Stars have solid defensively, have struggled to score goals. The Leafs quite the opposite. It's the handicap for me is I can envision the Stars getting closer to scoring goals than I can the Leafs fixing up their defensive deficiencies, you know, in a night.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the Stars though did. I mean, they ran pretty good in Pittsburgh the other night too. I'd say so. I don't know.
Yeah, they scored a goal with
It'll be
Alex
a game to
Nedeljkovic
watch for sure.
in the faceoff circle. So
well, and giving up one,
that
that was pretty generous too.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that they have an elite goalie, so you're gonna have that happen. But
all right, Nick, you can close out the week with your favorite bet for Thursday night.
yeah, so my favorite bet for Thursday is the over 6.5 in the Avs and Penguins game. I think what Tim said really helped to start making my case for this over, where he's kind of talking about how the Pens are going to be in this and that they have the offensive upside, all of that stuff. The number one thing that I think is going on with the Pens that is unlikely to continue is that they're shooting their whatever it is, their shooting percentages like bottom 5, and the chances have been pretty decent. Like I think that'd be the one positive you could say if you're a Pens fan right now is that what they've created would on average lead to more goals with this team. Everyone would have expected them to be a pretty strong over team, right? So, and then you talk about the potential that the Avs don't start Georgiev too. This just becomes a spot where I think locking in the over now is pretty great. The Pens have struggled badly to defend the rush. Again, I mean, you're going to have Letang or Carlson out there half the game. That's never going to make them extremely strong on that front. So I think we can kind of count on the Avs to get their share in this, but I like it as a good spot to bet on the Pens to bounce back offensively. So I think it just sets up well. It's a great game for both teams to, you know, I think they both project to score past 3 in this matchup. So like it.
All right, and Tim and I already said that we'd lean towards. Well, he likes the Penguins. I'd lean towards Pittsburgh as well in that one. And that does it for today's episode of Line Change. Off the top, our favorite underdogs were Flyers, the Penguins, and the Ducks. Best bets, the Flyers for me. Nick liked the over in Colorado and Pittsburgh, and Tim likes Dallas as a home favorite against the Maple Leafs. Whether you are tailing, fading, however you want to play it, we wish you the best of luck with all your bets on Thursday night, and we will see you again next week.